Hello, everyone, and thank you. Building on the excellent talks that we have been hearing today, I would like you to take a slightly higher up the scale. Uh, Probably not quite a bird's eye view, but definitely what's happening in the broader discussion and interaction space. Um, my name is Ramit, and I work with the Center for Climate Repair. And this is one of my group where we try to look at how do we understand the climate and environmental dimensions from a big data perspective. So one of the work streams that we have at Center for Climate Repair on focusing on this is one is a very method and innovative idea of how do we leverage machine learning, AI, and more statistics to understand how public perception and attitudes towards certain technologies can be better understand or unpacked. And the other part is on how these methods especially help us in a way where we can leverage social media and some archival data, which are embedded in texts. So the whole idea about text as data, so that was one of the foundation of computational social sciences. And I have a background in electrical engineering, transitioning to social sciences. So it's quite helpful in that. And the other part, the last part that we are currently working on is also understanding and deciphering what topic specifically drives these interactions. So from a broad perspective, so we have two different sets of data where we are trying to find the same answer or same context behind those data. So one is very fast moving in high volume, which is social media data. The next one is newspaper data, where the framing or the narratives are quite specifically placed for specific readership. And there are different ways of deciphering it. So we are both looking at how do we better use large language models to classify, decipher, have a model built out of that. And because of social media's nature, we also look at network analysis, how these different networks spill over to something else, or is it not spillovering, or is it kind of located somewhere? And then understanding these broad interaction effects between them. So the first work is essentially try to understand over a 13-year period. And this is pre-Elon Musk Twitter, so this was still a good place back then. And we could actually understand a lot more from the interactions that we have there. And here we looked at not only just geoengineering, but also the sub themes that are often associated with geoengineering. So it has a very broad and kind of open-ended description of what we mean by like climate technologies here. So you could see over time there is definitely a much more tweet count mentioning these topics. So the graph actually shows from 2009 to 2021 that how certain topics are getting more tweeted. So does it mean it's getting more popular? At least it's getting more attention. That's what I infer from it on certain topics. And even there, you could see geoengineering on figure A, which is in dark blue or I mean purplish here. So it still has some very interesting elements where 2014 to 2015 there is a peak of those topics, but for 2021 there is a huge surge in GGR, greenhouse gas removal as a topic. So how is that happening, or what are these interactions happening there? So the next, using these machine learning and large language models, especially one architecture that's quite widely used in literature is called BERT based classifiers. So these BERT classifiers are trained on billions of tweet to make a more accurate model and classification. So here, what's we see that we try to look at how sentiment, emotions are spread across this suite of climate engineering technologies, but also, interestingly, which technologies are most susceptible to conspiratorial beliefs or misinformation. So you could see here, so the more ones are definitely directly related to geoengineering as a broader topic. From there, anything that has to do with atmosphere, they are very susceptible to yeah, conspiracy and misinformation. So this is a very interesting one, that why atmosphere? Why not any other element? So then we try to look at the so all of these tweets, when we reduce their dimension and project it on 2D space. So each dot is actually a tweet. So we have close to around 1.5 million tweets here over 13-year period. And the blue is the most interesting bit that I see. So the geoengineering context is all over the place in the data set that we have, specifically looking at those tweets, whereas the other forms are clustered on a separate element. So it's almost like there is a very separate and big echo chamber for anything to do with geoengineering, whereas there are small echo chambers around blue carbon, ocean fertilization, afforestation, although there are certain interactions within these tweets itself. So again, I mean, this is still kind of from a academic point of view, this is very exploratory at this stage. We would like to actually know what's happening in that space. So with that, one of the findings that we had based on this classifier was the same thing that our earlier speaker also told, that Mother Nature knows how to heal itself, and Mother Nature knows when it comes to climate solution, and that we find that the embedded sentiments and emotions that we estimated in here, they are all very, see the blue, sorry, see the green and the blue in the sentiment itself. So everything that's more nature based or closer to nature, as at least perceptually, they are much positive, classified as positive sentiments, and that's exactly what we see. But we are also interested in knowing that what's happening in those conspiratorial space, and why certain tech are more closer to conspiratorial. So that's where we go deeper into these networks, and especially try to understand how this spillover is happening. And so, for example, this was a subset of that data where we specifically wanted to look at these core set of tweets, which were very conspiratorial and shaping that whole social media narrative. So, the first thing here was trying to have a projection of what are the projects that have been in public domain quite well, I mean, placed in Twitter, and it was very highly shared on this tweet platform, and what was the moving average of their sentiment. So the B graph is actually a moving average, so it's not the instantaneous reactions to the tweets. Rather, this is a moving average even after 4 months. So we had a sliding moving average window, although projecting on the 4th month moving average of this time series. So we could see there are certain announcements which piqued the tweet interests. So the y-axis on A is essentially the number of counts of tweets that mention or have been connected or kind of commented on the original tweet. So it's like a retweet tweet cycle that's combined together. So for example, Scopex is still one of the most kind of perturbed ones in the time series that we have here. And we could see that directly, even after a moving average smoothing, we could see that there are some direct dips. So this graph directly shows, and each dot is a tweet, mind you, that there is a strong shift of polarity from positive to negative, especially with respect to when the engagements are quite high. So again, I mean, more engagement does not necessarily mean positive sentiment, and that's something we were going inside over that. And next was actually trying to project that what drives these conversations. So, what are the words or what are the terms that were very critical in these data set? So, over time, we see that in the conspiratorial space of geoengineering, chemtrails are quite popular conspiracy theories. And that's what we see even from 2009 to 2013, this time period, and 2018. They quite get much more attraction. So the size of the word is essentially equal to the ones which are most shared and have more kind of movement in that Twitter data set. And the black dotted line is essentially trying to look at, is it the accounts that have at least 10,000 followers? So again, trying to understand who makes these things viral, and the context around who are the ones who are sharing and propagating this information over here. The next step was to look at what is the closest word that these term associate with, and this is done through a method called word embedding. So embeddings are a technique where we try to create a probability distribution function of the nearest word that we are interested in. So in this, so one example is not now, but in early days, Google search used to be based on that. So the moment you search one term and the next one is predicted on Google search bar, so that's word embedding. So here we try to look at what are the closest word to chemtrails, because we see that chemtrails being a very active term in that data set. So over time, there are definitely certain changes. So for me, one of the very interesting ones are actually 2018 to 21, because now you also see the effect of COVID-19 there. And there are terms which are anti-vax. So again, it's nothing to do with geoengineering, but that whole idea that conspiratorial conversations are often clustered, or they find the interactions within themselves. The other one is Bill Gates' project dimming the sun. So that's a spin off conspiracy from chemtrails, where the idea is Bill Gates is trying to fund projects where the whole idea is to dim the sun and control population, etc. Same goes for the top terms, which is essentially end spraying. So that again deal with chemtrails that I'll go slightly deeper next, and so on. There are also a lot of context around climate propaganda itself. So that's the broader part of the conspiracies around climate, that climate change is not real, and then it has its own propaganda around it itself. So why this conspiratorial chemtrails kind of accounts so popular? So this is one example, and you could see the amount of follower this account has, which is 373.2K, and it was way back when we were doing this research. And these are the kind of messages that's being shared. So again, lines on the sky, and then it says it's from another summer day here in UK, devoid of any visible sun or blue sky. Again, I mean, so these are some of very compelling messages that are shared, and I'll go next as well and show even more from elite groups. These are shared in a very distinctive kind of ways, which has its own questions. And even then, which is so this is a account when we looked at June 24, 2024, and it already had 192K views. So again, this is how the again like the accounts, they kind of propagate on this, and the messaging there is concerned citizens, I am helping, and yeah, everything else you could see. So not only just geoengineering, but also no mRNA. So that's a COVID vaccine kind of conspiratorial message as well in this. So now we wanted to look at who are these interconnections from. So chemtrails, we see that it's a driver. And one of the good things with Twitter as a data back then was the use of hashtags as a connective medium. So you can use network science here. So we used something which is known as eigenvector centrality, which actually measures how one term or a one node is influential in shaping up that network. And we actually wanted to use this chemtrail as a central node to see how it's shaping up. So quite interesting patterns that we see. One is definitely for UK, it is quite clustered. So some there are genuine concerns on climate actions and the impact on climate of this kind of experiment. But there are environmental concern. There is a group around conspiratorial theories. So that also has this hashtag called NWO, which is like New World Order, and that directly connects with political conspiracies like Brexit and anything that has to deal with yeah, deep state and everything else right there. So again, it's conspiratorial beliefs try to connect together, create their own echo chamber effect. In Sweden, so at that time, one of our limitation of the study was we did not look at any Swedish language tweets. So all the tweets were in English. And that was the time when large language models were not that capable as well. So now there are a lot more capability to repeat this experiment essentially. And here in the Swedish, so the idea is anyone who is using this hashtag chemtrail, why would you then the next hashtag would be US, India, UK, some other country. So definitely there is some spillover effect happening and connecting to the more country specific context. And that's what we see in Sweden as well. And a lot of hashtags. So again, one quick note here. the bigger the size of the word and the hashtag, that's being kind of the driver node essentially in its neighborhood. So on the top of the Sweden, you could see Harvard, Scopex, solar environment, climate crisis, and all these kind of hashtags together, driving kind of a localized network over there on the conversation. And same we see for US and India as well. So now on the elite group, one of the interesting bit is Kylie Jenner tweeted this. So how many of you know Kylie Jenner? I think quite a few, exactly. So yeah, I mean, again, very important personality, 39.3 million. And I mean, it's May 26, 2015. These questions are being asked, which are directly what also related to the chemtrails. And yeah, Y-75 plane spraying white stuff on the sky. Yeah, 15 minutes drive to my work, etc. And similar context. So again, there is this new effect that we see on elite cues. So there are certain elite actors on this platform who are trying to shape up certain cues. And even The Verge, which is a very popular magazine, yeah, they are covering this, and Kim Kardashian is retweeting it. So again, that's the elite effect there. So that's my bigger question. Why am I talking about them in this conference? So now the next work we are currently doing is actually looking at how these messages are spread into some of the most popular newspapers in the world, New York Times and BBC, and the cues from that. So what's happening? Am I done? Okay. All right. Thank you so much.